So I want to acknowledge, sometimes I make this announcement when we have a bar or bat mitzvah and there are many, many people visiting. I realize actually we don't have a sign that says this, so it's completely reasonable that folks may not be aware, but I do want to ask in the sanctuary and in the synagogue, just before you come in, I guess I want to give you the gift of turning off your cell phones, okay? Shabbat, it was very interesting. When I was in Jerusalem, I met with one of the teachers who we had a chance to learn with was Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, and I can talk a little bit more about this at the shiur that I'm going to offer from 1 to 2 o'clock in the Beit Midrash about conversion in Israel, and we'll study a text, but we heard from him about his conversion program, and one of the ways that he told a story, one of the ways that he defined Shabbat now, obviously it wasn't this way in the Talmud, is really no using your phone. And obviously people will do what they want, but in this space we try to have it be a Shabbos atmosphere, have it be a place that is quiet and sort of free from the pings and the bings and the rings and the other things that are constantly notifying us. So gently and with love, I just want to remind people that it is a gift to, before you come into shul and while you're in the synagogue on Shabbat, to just leave it all behind. One notice, how many people have seen The Prince of Egypt? Okay, how many people have seen Cecil B. DeMille's and the Ten Commandments? Okay, it's probably like a different generation of raising hands between the two. So the story which we read in this week's parsha, the first seven plagues, we've seen in movie versions, and there's a problem with that because the way that they're portrayed in movies ends up affecting how we read the text, and we think that the text is just like the movie version. First of all, one of the things I'll point out is that it's not clear in the movies. These all happen pretty quickly, right? Who plays Moses? Charlton Heston. Sorry, I've seen it. I just didn't remember. Charlton Heston walks in to Pharaoh, says this, walks out, there's a plague. Walks back in, says, I'm going to do the next one. There's another plague. It all seems to happen very quickly. In the Torah, there's no timeline given, and except in I think it was the 7th Aliyah or the 6th Aliyah, where we read something about the Aviv, which is a type of plant, but that actually means what in modern Hebrew? Spring, right? So the word for spring actually comes from this plant which only sprouted during the springtime, right? So we're told a little bit that some of this is happening in the early spring, and obviously the Exodus itself will happen on the 15th of Nisan in the spring, but the plagues themselves, in the Eitz Chaim commentary, it actually says, the plague of blood may have been related to a certain type of flooding that happens in the fall, right? So it may be that this all took place over 6 months, right? And we read through it, just chickadee-chock, right? But this may have been unfolding month after month after month, not like in the movie version, okay? And it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing is there are details in the Torah that point to a different version of events. And I was studying the Kli Yakar this week and found one of those, and I just want to share with you this detail that I've been reading this story for many years. And when I read the story, it's about the first plague. It's the plague of blood. What happens? Okay, and I'll read you just the verses from the Torah. This part is like the movie version, I guess. The Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh, I'm on chapter 7, verse 14, if you want to check me later. Pharaoh is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. As he's coming out to the water, station yourself before him at the edge of the Nile. Okay, that sounds familiar. We saw Charlton Heston there, and whoever played, what was the name of the guy who played Pharaoh? Yul Brynner, right? Yul Brynner, right? He's coming out of not bald, right? He's coming out of the Nile, taking with you the rod that turned into the snake. Okay, so Moses has his rod. When did he get the rod that turned into a snake? What? At the burning bush, right? Because he says, it's been hundreds of years. I'm going to go up to the people and say, hey, guess what? The redemption is beginning. They're not going to believe me. And God says, take the staff that's in your hand and throw it on the ground. It turns into a snake. So the Torah here says, take the rod that turned into the snake and say to Pharaoh, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you to say, let my people go. When Sid was reading it, he was singing in his mind, let my people go, right? As he told me that was sort of in his mind, a phrase that comes up a lot. It actually doesn't say, let my people go. It says, send forth my people. It's actually even, but that's a whole other thing. That they may worship me in the wilderness. But you've paid no heed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. See, I strike the water, right? I strike the water in the Nile with the rod that is in my hand, and it will be turned into blood. And the fish in the Nile will die, and the Nile will stink, so that the Egyptians will find it impossible to drink the water of the Nile. That part's the movie part, right? Moses takes the staff. It was the staff that turned into a snake. He strikes the Nile, and the Nile turns into blood. Listen to the very next verse. You all read it this morning, but listen and pay attention. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod. I'm adding that for emphasis, but it says your. Say to Aaron, take your rod. Whose rod? Aaron's, not Moses's. There are two rods. Right? Moses, no. You said both snakes. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Moses has a rod that turned into a snake. Aaron has his own rod. Did you know this in the movie version? Right? Take your rod, hold out your arm over the waters of Egypt. So I didn't notice, he doesn't hit it, right? Hold out your arm and over the waters of Egypt. So not just the Nile. And then it goes into details. It's rivers, all of Egypt's rivers, its canals, its ponds, all of its bodies of waters, that they may turn to blood. There shall be blood throughout the land of Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone. It's like taking a drink from the drinking fountain, and blood, it's like horrible, right? When blood starts coming out. So Aaron's staff, and the rabbis tell us, they pay very close attention, Aaron's staff, in other places, where staff or rod, it's the same. In other places, just hold on, okay? In other places is called not a nachash, but is called a tanin. A tanin is a sea monster. The commentary that I was reading, it said that it's an extremely dangerous reptile, right? I think of a Komodo dragon, right? Those things where if they spit at you, right, then you get poisoned and die. But or maybe a cobra, right? But an extremely dangerous type of thing. But it is not a snake, and that is why the plague, according to at least the Kli Yakar, the staff of Aaron is far more deadly. Because it's not just acting on the Nile, it's acting on all of the rivers that are all over Egypt. Okay? So first of all, I just think that's interesting, right? That there's a different version when you read carefully of the story in the book than it's in our minds. And one thing we can learn for this is how important it is to read carefully, right? Because there are a lot of details in the Bible that come out that we have to slow down and pay attention to. But the Kli Yakar makes another beautiful point, and it's this that I just want to finish up and share with you this morning. He says as follows: Lo hutzrach la'asot zeh. Okay, there was no bimatehu shel Moshe. There was no need to do this worse aspect of the plague, right? Hitting all of the waters all over Egypt and not just the river Nile with the staff of Moshe. Okay, and why not? First of all, kvar na'aseh nes zeh lifnei Yisrael. Because there was already a miracle done using Moshe's staff before Israel. Moshe had used his staff. Presumably he gets back from the burning bush, and he does do this miracle, and the people see it turn into a snake. Now, why would that be a problem for him to do this more terrible plague? Va'od lefi shekeneged Yisrael lo ratza Hashem sheyeh chamat taninim mantehu. God did not want the ferocity of the tanim, of this more deadly sea monster, right? Reptile, snake, whatever it was, before the Jewish people in Moses' hands. Umateu shel Moshe kolel, because the staff of Moshe includes hanhaga ben Yisrael ben Pharaoh, includes leading both Pharaoh, right? He's got to lead Pharaoh to, through the plagues and all this, but he also has to lead the Jewish people. And therefore, and he says that the staff of Aaron is called a tanin. And by the way, Pharaoh in the Haftarah, Eric, this is for you, in the Haftarah, Ezekiel, is called, Ezekiel calls Pharaoh a tanin. And so the Kli Yakar says that the staff of Aaron needs to be as vicious as a tanin to battle against Pharaoh, who is as vicious as a tanin. Okay? But that sort of ferocity can't be in Moshe's hand. And I think that teaches us something very important about leadership and something very important about teaching. As part of every moment of leading either a community or a group or teaching, there are moments when we need to draw boundaries. There are moments of what the rabbis call din. When sometimes, Tommy, sorry about this, I'm sure it's never the case with you, but other kids sometimes need to learn where the boundary is, right? And they need their parents to be strict with them. Right? Other kids, not you, right? You're a good kid. You never break any rules. And when we do, that's a difficult moment. And what the Kli Yakar is saying is you have to be very careful, because you can't have too much of that if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be a disciplinarian. And so Aaron has a special role to play. Now, Joel Fleischman pointed out downstairs when I gave her the Sefer Torah that this actually flips it, because what do we think of when we think of Aaron? He's Ohev Shalom v'Rodef Shalom, right? And he seeks peace, but maybe Aaron seeks peace because he also had to play this much, much more difficult role. And Moshe is a character who can contain both, but closer to the middle. He knows how to love, he knows how to lead, and he knows how to set a boundary, right? And that is all contained in Moshe's staff, which is a snake, and not the cobra or the Komodo dragon. So my blessing for us is that, first of all, we always see the words of Torah anew and pay attention and receive the gift of reading closely, and that we remember the wisdom of holding both compassion and judgment carefully together so that we can continue forward. Shabbat Shalom.